Luci? Molto bene. Allora, dopo l'inizio pirotecnico con Beppe, inizia il nostro programma tecnico, qui in Main Hall, e abbiamo selezionato la startup che ci è sembrata migliore negli Stati Uniti quando siamo stati alla PhoCusWright Conference. Abbiamo fatto di tutto all'ultimo momento per averla qui con noi sul palco. Farà un keynote di 20 minuti, poi lasceremo qualche spazio per le domande finali. Chiamo sul palco Gilad Bernstein di Utrip. Hello, Gilad.
Hello, my name is Gilad, as you said, and I'm thrilled to be with you today, all the way from beautiful and rainy Spokane, Washington. So with that, I'm excited to tell you a little bit about Utrip and how we work with hotels. But before I get into talking more about that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So as I said, my name is Gilad. I was born in Israel, where my dad is an artificial intelligence architect. So as a kid, I became very familiar with technology, and specifically artificial intelligence, in trying to learn what it was and what it wasn't. Later in life, I went to University of Washington, where in graduate school, my roommate was a PhD in psychology. And I became fascinated by trying to understand the psychological process, and specifically decision-making research. Why do we all make the crazy decisions that we choose to make? The last and most important piece about me, of course, is my deepest passion is travel, one of the greatest joys a life can offer. After finishing graduate school, I took one of those classic graduation trips to Europe. And I planned my trip in what I referred to as the modern traditional way, a combination of travel guides, scores of sites, and hours upon hours putting together an itinerary that was uniquely mine. When I got there, I had a blast. But I continuously fell into misinformation, holes in my itinerary, and all sorts of hurdles and obstacles that travelers face every day. Let me give you a couple of really quick examples. When I got to Paris, I had a great hotel. It was within my budget and had all of the amenities I wanted. But because I was a first-time traveler, I didn't know the layout of the city. I didn't realize that my hotel was miles away from the activities I most wanted to attend. This meant I spent more time in Parisian traffic than I did seeing the sights. Next, in Barcelona, I wanted to see a soccer game at the famous Camp Nou. Well, there was a game the day I arrived and the game the day I left, but unfortunately no game in between. It was a problem that there were no tools out there to help me manage the literally hundreds of conflicting schedules of all the different things I wanted to do. The last example happened in Rome, where on my last day I met a local chef. He took me to his favorite little restaurant for dinner. This was an amazing experience, but one I wanted to have all throughout my trip and not just on the very last day. So when I got back from Europe, I combined the lessons I learned while traveling with my deep passion for travel and technology to create Utrip, a platform that combines the best of human and artificial intelligence to help travelers see the world in their own unique ways. We created Utrip in order to enable travelers to have a highly personalized and authentic travel experience, to integrate the travel lifecycle from research to planning to purchasing to managing and finally sharing your trip, and of course, to create a quick and easy way to do it. Let me show you how it works. When a traveler comes into Utrip, they begin by selecting the destinations they'd like to travel to, and then they indicate the dates they want to travel on. Once we know where and when the traveler is going, this is where Utrip flips the traditional planning model on its head. We do this by asking about you, and then we go out and bring in the best content and the best inventory to complete and enhance that experience. To make it fast and easy, we've created these profiles, and by selecting a profile, you give the algorithms the first little bit of information about you. And it presets these levers you see over to the left. These levers came out of research we conducted with psychology professors at the University of Washington who study consumer decision-making to try to understand how people plan trips and what the decision-making life cycle actually looks like. As you can see, some of these metrics are subject matters, art, culture, history, or sports, And some of these are meta-level factors, things such as pace and spontaneity. You can change your inputs, see the recommendations change over to the right, and once you're happy with your initial selection, you press Plan My Trip, and Utrip goes to work. In the couple seconds that this itinerary loaded, we went out and created 10,000 generations of this itinerary. And we iterated on every generation to make the next one that much better and that much more personal, beginning by looking at the traveler's interest and budget, then looking at other important factors such as hours of operations and seasonality, geographic optimization and diversity, to make these itineraries exciting when you're at home planning them, but also really enjoyable when you're on the ground actually going through your trip. Welcome to the day view, where you could see your trip day by day and city by city. You can get more information about any of the recommendations we've made, photos, descriptions, tips, hours, etc. For those recommendations you like, you can lock them in place. For those recommendations you dislike, you can X out of it or fill it yourself. And Utrip learns about you. So every time you do this, we continue to learn about you to ensure that every future iteration of this itinerary is that much better and that much more personal because we know about you. This is also one of the many ways that we learn about our travelers to provide meaningful analytics and data for your business so you can better understand your customers. This is our day view. We've also created a week view, and this works like a Google Calendar, allows you to drag and drop, change duration, and do all those different things you want to do with a calendar. And here again, the algorithm learns about you. So if you begin to move your museums the first thing in the morning, with time, Utrip will pick up on that and begin to recommend museums first thing in the morning. Lastly, we have two ways for our travelers to consume their itineraries on the go. First is a printable PDF with your map, confirmation, phone number, addresses, emails, everything you need. But more importantly is our mobile application, which gives you all this information and so much more on the go. Because I know your interests, because I know your budget, because I know where you're standing and what time of day it is, Utrip can make highly personalized recommendations each and every time a traveler interacts with their itinerary. The last thing I'll show you is our tag and search functionality. Let's say you know something specific you want to do, you could just search for it and add it directly. But let's say you know you're a history buff, but don't necessarily know what all these destinations have to offer. You can come in and using our tag system, begin to give the algorithm more information. Say, I'm interested in Renaissance or Baroque history. And every time you do this, we learn about you. So you can continue to imagine yourself on the ground and build a personal relationship with that destination. Now that you've had a chance to see the product, I want to tell you a little more about the science and the technology that's behind it. As I mentioned, when we started working on Utrip, we spent over 6 months with psychologists and decision-making researchers at the University of Washington. We started by asking a very simple question: what leads to the best travel experiences and what leads to the worst travel experiences? When we asked what leads to the best trips, respondents say authentic experiences, much like the experience the chef helped me have in Rome. When you flip that question, you ask what leads to the worst travel experiences. A majority of respondents say misinformation, like what happened with my hotel in Paris, or the feeling of a wasted experience, missing the soccer game in Barcelona. As we continued, we delved deeper into the decision-making research to try to understand the decision-making life cycle. What is the process that travelers go through in their minds as they plan trips? And as you can see, we found a 6-stage life cycle, beginning with discovery, moving on to research, planning, purchasing, managing, and finally sharing your trip. One thing that's important to note here is that these are all decisions, but some of these are being made consciously, you think about them, and some of these are being made subconsciously. It's something that almost seems obvious, like it's not a decision, but your subconscious mind has already made that at some point throughout the travel life cycle. The thing I want to emphasize here is that trip planning always begins with discovery. Because for some, travel is about the art. And for others, it's about sports or adventure. For some, it's the history and the culture that they travel for. And for me, it's always the food. But regardless of what drives you, trip planning is about the experiencing. It's about exploring, discovering, enjoying, eating, and smelling. And that's where trip planning always begins. The problem is, what we see in the industry is that most companies focus all of their digital resources purely on the purchase phase of the travel lifecycle. And I bet that's true for many of you. And it makes perfect sense. We're in the business to make money, to sell our product. It makes sense that we focus on sales. However, this is not how people plan trips. And if you focus exclusively on the purchase phase of the travel lifecycle, you are missing an incredible opportunity to build a relationship with your customer that's going to be long-lasting over many years. The other problem is that this is by far the most competitive phase of the travel lifecycle. When you come here to Florence, every one of the wonderful hotels in the city is competing over your business. The way to win is to have an actual relationship with your customer. Over the last year or two, some of the other companies have begun to figure out that focusing purely on purchasing doesn't actually work very well. So what we've seen is companies begin to introduce some discovery features and functionality into their websites and into their digital tools, but then often are driving directly from discovery to purchasing. Let me give you an example. This is an excellent ad campaign run by Expedia called the Find Your campaign. It shows beautiful photos of incredible destinations around the world and people having the time of their life. The problem is, you see this ad, you get inspired to go on a trip, and they immediately want you to book something. And most travelers are just not ready to make a purchase decision at this phase. What we have found over the last 3 years is that there are 2 ways to best engage your customers in the trip planning lifecycle that leads to the longest lasting relationship and the highest lifetime value of that customer. The first begins at discovery and the second in planning. Discovery is ultimately the best place to begin because this is the point in the travel lifecycle where no decision has been made. The world is a possibility, and you can help drive your potential customer in any direction that you wish if you provide the proper information and the proper engagement over time. The second place to begin this life cycle is in the planning process. At this point, most travelers have already selected a destination and have at least rough dates that they're going to be traveling on. The most important thing about the planning phase of the life cycle, this is when decisions begin to be made. Most travelers are still going to make multiple decisions before they book anything, but this is the point where if you're with them, you are able to stick with them, and they can make a decision to stay with you, to travel with you this time, and hopefully moving forward. When starting in either one of these 2 entry points, there are 3 things that are most important to remember. First, a long-lasting relationship is about a real personal relationship between your brand and your customer. The reason brands are so important, the reason so many of you focus so much time, energy, and resources on brand is because that's a relationship. We feel affinity for certain brands, and that's why we buy from them over and over and over again. The second piece is continued engagement. As you know from any relationship you have in your life, personal or business, relationships are not built in one interaction. They're built over time, over multiple positive interactions that happen over and over again. And that's important to remember. It's about continued engagement. Even if you have one wonderful experience with your customer, that is not enough to build a long-lasting relationship that will get them to come back to your property time after time after time. And last of all is the creation of trust. As we all know, every relationship is based on trust, and especially these relationships where a customer is being asked to pay money. They want to feel trust in the brand, and they want to feel connected to your brand. Now, how do we help hotels with this? When we work with hotels, we have a 3 touchpoint model which allows us to engage a traveler through the entire travel life cycle. We begin in the pre-booking phase. As you remember, that is super important for building a long relationship by providing hotels with a pre-booking tool that can live on their websites, on their social media presence, and everywhere else that allows you to help the traveler discover a destination with your hotel in mind. Second, post-booking pre-arrival. This is the idea that from the second a customer gives you their credit card, you should demonstrate value to them. You want to show them they made a great decision by booking with you. The way we do this is by embedding trip planners into the confirmation emails that you send to your guests after they book with you, and allowing them to have a digital concierge experience before they ever leave their home. And lastly is on-premises. We provide this tool to be embedded into the Wi-Fi splash page, iPads, TVs, any piece of technology you may have on property, So to support your existing concierge and to support the great work you're already doing. So let me show you how this works. What you can see right here is the website of Personality Hotels. And this is a San Francisco-based hotel brand with 7 hotels in the Bay Area. And as you can see, we've embedded Utrip into their site. As I've suggested, they added a discovery feature to their website to help their customers be able to imagine themselves on the ground, of course, staying at one of Personality's hotels. And as I mentioned, they use all 3 of our levels of engagement by sending this to their customers in the emails they send them after confirmation, as well as having it available on property. Let me show you how this works. Just like with Utrip, a customer comes in and says, I'm thinking about traveling to San Francisco on these dates. In this instance, as you can see, we skip the map because we know that this traveler is going to San Francisco, so there's no reason to ask them that question. Once we know where and when they're going, just like with utrip.com, we flip the traditional planning model on its head to help them craft an experience. And as you can see, we customize these profiles to fit the type of guests that Personality Hotels want to attract to their properties. So if you want the foodie or the luxury traveler, the backpacker, it doesn't matter. We will customize it to appeal to the type of guest who stays with you. The traveler selects a profile, plays with the levers just as they did in utrip.com, and when they're ready, they press Plan My Trip. I won't go through it all again because you just had an opportunity to see it, but I do want to show you a couple important things that pertain to hotels. First, as you can see here, Utrip's algorithm does a really nice job of helping the traveler navigate away from the hotel in the morning and back towards the hotel at night. This gives the traveler the feeling that your hotel is their gateway to the city. It's what enables them to do all the wonderful things they want to do while on the ground. The other thing that's really important to note is our expert feature. So the first thing I told you about Utrip is that we combine the best of human and artificial intelligence in trip planning. One of the most important aspects of the human intelligence are experts on the ground, chefs, historians, artists, photographers, etc., who know your cities like no one else. The best thing is you have some of these experts on your staff. You probably have an executive chef. You may have a sommelier. You may have a concierge. You may have other people who are uniquely suited not only to help a customer see the city, but again, to show off why your property is wonderful and why that guest should choose to stay with you. So as you can see right here, we've included some of the extras from Personality Hotels. We gave information about them and links back to the property so the customer can learn about them and become closer, continue to engage and to build that relationship with your brand. Most important of all, these experts create featured trips. These are pre-curated itineraries that give the traveler the best of both worlds. An itinerary put together by someone in the know, someone they trust, with the power of all these algorithms to make it their own. So you could go plan this food trip and then say that you're also interested in sports or history or whatever else it might be to continue to personalize it further. When working with Utrip, we bring hotels 4 primary benefits. The first and most important is around the brand and the ability to provide a high-quality, personalized experience that is differentiated from the rest of the hotels on your block. Second is booking. Over the last 2.5 years, we've seen the travelers that use Utrip go on longer trips than the average traveler. And they return back to the customer, this is revenue, excuse me, and return back to the destination multiple times because of that personal relationship they've built with the destination and with the brand. Going back to booking, this is really important. Every time I talk to a hotelier, one of the things they tell me is that they want to get customers to book on their websites. They don't want them to go to all these other places where they can book. And I always ask the hoteliers the same question. You got someone to your website, now what? If they're not ready to make a purchase decision, why would they stay? Why would they come back? There's nothing for them to do. Utrip helps you answer that question because every time they come to your website, they can continue to discover the destination and discover the brand. And lastly is social. I don't need to tell all of you the importance of social, the importance of being present. Utrip makes social sharing fun and easy. It encourages your guests to share their experience with their friends and family, which will make those people more likely to come and stay with you and to patronize your businesses. The last piece I'm going to talk about for just 1 second before I wrap up is the analytics piece. A few weeks ago at PhoCusWright Conference in LA, we announced our new analytics product. When a user uses Utrip, we learn about them in 3 ways. We learn about their demographics, their psychographics, and their behavioral patterns. Every month, we aggregate this information and make it available to you as our partner. This allows you to understand how a traveler coming to Florence from New York differs from a traveler coming from London, or how a 20-something from London differs from a 40-something, or how a luxury traveler travels differently when they come in winter versus when they come in summer. This information is unbelievably valuable for you to better spend your marketing and advertising resources to show the right ads to the right people at the right time. Lastly, I want to one more time emphasize the importance of discovery and research. If you take nothing else away from this, remember that every trip starts here. Right here we have a quote from the CEO of L2, which is an organization in the US who studies the industry. And he said, "Few brands seem to be connecting with the 79% of travelers who view activities as the key consideration in trip planning. And only 1 in 5 hotels offers curated itineraries, even though we know that a vast majority of travelers begin planning a trip by thinking about the things they want to do on the ground." Now, to conclude, I want to talk about this beautiful country of Italy. Utrip already serves some of the great destinations available in this country, the ones you can see on the screen, as well as Palermo, and many more are being added all the time. Even more excitingly, I'm excited to announce our first hotel partner here in Italy with To Florence. Soon, their properties will be able to offer their guests the opportunity to plan the trips of their dreams directly from their websites. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here, and I very much look forward to meeting many of you throughout the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gilad. I was going to ask you a few questions. It's Philip here. Maybe we could turn the lights up just a little bit, and then if anybody has a question from the audience, let me know. So I guess as founder of PhoCusWright, I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of companies that tackle this trip planning puzzle. It needs to be more genuine. We need data analytics. We need to intersect social, what other people love, and how to be authentic. So there's been no shortage of these companies, but where there has been a shortage is companies in this category that have been successful because the passion and the need haven't intersected yet with a good business model. How are you going to be the first company to break that tradition?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So I have a few perspectives on why so many trip planners have tried in the past and failed. The first big one is technology. Only a few years ago, the technology that's available today to allow us to bring together multiple data sources and to marry them for a specific user was something that wasn't available more than a few years ago. And the advances in machine learning and artificial intelligence really allow us to offer depth of destination. And that's the second point I want to make. A lot of trip planners in the past have been shallow. Shallow in getting to know the user and shallow in getting to know the destination. We spent over 18 months with psychology professors and leading artificial intelligence scientists to really be able to develop a system that deeply understands the unique aspects and desires of a specific traveler, as well as deeply understanding those destinations. Those combinations together leads to a much more meaningful trip that people enjoy and want to go on time after time. And then the very last thought is the combination of human and artificial intelligence. I strongly believe that neither one of these is sufficient on their own. Travel is a highly human experience by its nature. If we remove the human component of it, we lose something that's very important. So I believe that these mixed together is what's going to allow us to succeed.
Well, we'll watch you to see if you're correct, and we have an audience question.
Good morning. My name is Angelo Brigante. I work for Abruzzo Link, which is a new touristic service. We are trying to sell tour guides, but experience, so it's customized one-to-one. So my question is the following. I like your idea.
Thank you.
I was thinking about it, a few weeks ago, but maybe you have started a little bit before. And the second thing is that you have realized what I was just in my dream. So my question is, when did you start? how long did you take? And in Italy, there is this very little problem. What was your budget?
Yeah, great question. So the trip that I mentioned at the beginning where the idea came from is a trip I took in fall of 2010. So about 4 years ago, I experienced a problem and I needed a better solution than what I was already doing. Then I spent I was a management consultant, so I spent about a year just thinking about it and not really doing anything about it. And then in April of 2011, so about 3.5 years ago, is when we really started working on this. And as I mentioned, we took 18 months to get the first beta out. I think this is one of the big differences between Utrip and many of the other startups out there. Conventional wisdom often tells you you've got a couple months to get a product to market or you're going to be irrelevant. We did not listen to that advice, and we took the proper time to develop a product that we believe really gets to know you as a traveler and really gets to know the destination. And finally, everything we built in the prototype cost less than $1 million. And that is really because we spent so much effort squeezing every little bit of learning that we absolutely could out of our a small number of travelers we had early on, so we could really learn and develop this product in as quickly as we can within reason, and of course in a low budget as we can. Thank you for the question.
Signore e signori, grazie Gilad. Le ho portati qui direttamente da Seattle, una fatica immane, ma ce l'hanno fatta. Thank you very much. I bring you here from Seattle because it was extremely difficult, but you're here. 2 minuti e passiamo al prossimo ospite.